Hello, everyone. This is Philosophy People with Stefan Bertram, and we are joined once again by Quinn. Quinn
What's up, guys?
realized, obviously, that he'd bought his way onto the show last week by making an intro. So, in the meantime, he's created an outro, which will play at the end of the show, and hopefully, he's just finished uploading.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully.
Soon has asked in the chat, anyone know if we're getting Dune Part 3? It wrapped filming like 2 days ago.
Yeah, it looks like with a release sometime in 2026.
So yes, today we are going to be talking about fate and destiny, specifically as it's portrayed in the films Dune and Dune 2. Well, and simultaneously with the books and whatever. I'm going to speak it all vaguely as the Dune. the Dune. And The Northman by Eggers, which was an original screenplay, not based on anything at all apart from history.
Well,
does Dune need introduction? Do we need to explain to people what a Dune is?
Well, when wind hits a lot of sand.
I do remember sand dunes. I haven't been at sand dune in a long while, but there's lots of them around here. I remember mostly there being a way of getting a lot of sand in you, on a kind of Anakin Skywalker kind of level. But yes, for the one person who doesn't know, Dune is a sci-fi series that was adapted into some very good films recently, and the whole kind of structure of destiny and fate is utterly essential to these films. They're based around the idea that for thousands of years, this order of female nuns, kind of, but they also marry people, and that's kind of, well, not marry people, but they have relationships with the male aristocracy for the reason of eventually producing the perfect person who can see through time and space. They're that intelligent, and so can solve kind of the problems that are causing the Galactic Empire to slowly collapse and decay. And the actual film is about one guy who was born, his family line was meant to produce this character, this perfect being, the Kiswat Haderach. But he was born one generation too early. And we see that because he still has this kind of flawed human nature, his struggle with this fate and this destiny. Quinn, do you want to introduce The Northman?
Sure, yeah. So the Northman 2022 film by Robert Eggers, it's an adaptation of an ancient Norse myth, this Hamlet story. It's a Scandinavian mythological figure. When exactly it was the original source is kind of lost from history. I think the earliest we have written accounts is somewhere around the 13th century. This is the source material that Shakespeare adapted into Hamlet. So, like, you know, if you've seen Hamlet, you kind of know what's going to happen. Broad strokes, you know, ancient times, Scandinavian king returns, does a bit of a ceremony with his son, killed by his illegitimate brother. Son escapes, goes Viking out in Russia. Then
as he's fleeing this island, as he escapes, he makes his own fate. He determines his own fate, where he's like, I will save my mother, I will avenge my father. I will save my mother, I will avenge my father. I will save my mother, I will avenge my father.
And so he in his escape, he makes this oath to himself or to the kind of fates in a larger scale. There's a scene of him with his kind of band of merry adventurers as they sack a village and completely destroy it. It's fairly violent.
You know, it's one of the few rare portrayals of kind of a sacking of a village in pre-modern times that's like accurate or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the instances of Viking raids completely destroying villages were not necessarily all the time, because really, like, you don't want to
if you're raid farming, you don't want to.
Exactly. You want to just destroy the village enough that they can rebuild, and you can come back in like a year or two, and they've got new stuff for you to take.
But if you decided, you know, we're going for it, then
I mean, they definitely burnt a lot of villages too. And so through this whole process, they're capturing slaves, and our hero Amleth, who's played by Alexander Skarsgård. He's I think the tallest of the Skarsgård brothers, or I don't know. They're all like freakishly tall.
I mean, he's also very hench in this movie for any male ab appreciators out there.
He's fucking huge. Like the guy is ripped. And so he overhears something about his uncle, this like illegitimate brother of his father, who killed his, the rest of his family, captured his mother, his whole thing. Apparently, he's been run out of. He no longer has the throne that he murdered for. He's hiding out somewhere in Iceland, and that's where some of these slaves are being sent to. So he slices his hair off, brands himself with like a slavery brand, and swims onto the ship that's going towards Iceland.
And I was like, bro, you still weigh like 250 pounds.
Yeah,
you don't really look like a convincing slave.
He's easily like 3 heads taller than the tallest person on this boat. He's like trying to hide down. It's a whole thing. He meets,
because one of the most important bits of the Fate and Destiny stuff is that basically the end of this movie. We are going to spoil the whole thing.
Oh yeah, no, full spoilers. Also, like, it's basically Hamlet. If you've seen The Lion King, you know where the story is going to go. So it's not that shocking. But he on the boat he meets Ana de Armas, who plays his kind of love interest. They get to the island. He meets no one recognizes him because he was a child and they all think he's dead.
He's actually played by a different actor, so
oh yeah, I mean that might do it. But as they go through, he I think before he leaves, actually, he has this vision from like a witch
the village
figure.
The vision he gets from the sorcerer lady in the village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is played by Bjork, I think. She gives him a whole kind of a bunch of kind of vague gestures that we've come to expect from prophecies, but
he's like, oh, clearly what you mean is that I need to avenge my father and rescue my mother.
Yeah, well, so she literally says, remember your oath to right the wrong. And finishes by giving him he's like, release me, and she looks at him and says, you cannot escape what fate the Norns have spun. And these Norns to which she refers are the Norse version of the Fates. This is excuse my pronunciation, Urur, Verondi, and Skold. They are they're essentially the ancient Greek Fates, except for instead of just sitting around doing knitting, they're also tending to Yggdrasil, the world tree. But they are the figures that are weaving together the tapestry of life, and they are kind of they're not necessarily fully predictive. Like, they can't tell exactly what the future is going to be, but they're the ones who are kind of guiding what threads exist in the present into only a couple of ways that they can be woven together into the future.
Also present in De Nobelwang, the Ring by Wagner. So yes, he does get to the island. He starts trying to enterprise his. Well, first, he gets in everyone's confidences. He gets awarded the Slavic lady as his woman. He meets up with another weird wizard witch in the woods and gets a magic sword, or possibly a mundane sword which he hallucinated. Blah blah blah. And he fights a skeleton, or maybe he just imagined it.
I think that throughout the whole film, there's an interesting kind of. I think Eggers does this pretty well, where all of the kind of magical elements are shot in this like it's a super desaturated palette. It's much more kind of unreal lighting, and it's left kind of up to the viewer's interpretation whether or not this is like, you know, actually something supernatural or just this is the way that these people are interpreting the world.
So it was so like he finds like another witch in the forest who then gives him like a vision of the witch that he saw in his father's court or whatever.
Yeah. So I think that the witch wizard who I think there's a whole like thing about I remember reading something about like gender presentation in this movie that like is interesting historically, but it's completely gone to me. The the second kind of magical person in the woods has the first seer's head like preserved, and so his like mummified head is what's speaking in that scene.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say the most unambiguously seeming magical bit is where the bit where like the ravens rescue him off the where he's imprisoned or whatever.
That's yeah. I mean, yeah. That's pretty hard to.
Maybe they just came unlocked.
Sure. Yeah.
You haven't seen The Witch, right? I think you said you hadn't.
No, I have not.
Yeah, because that's really, really great.
I might have seen it on a plane, but I have no memory of it.
But then right at the end, he does like he shows what seems to be completely unambiguous magic, and I was a bit like, oh, it's a shame.
I mean, I don't think the ambiguity is necessarily central to what the film's trying to do, but I think it works.
So yeah, he ingratiates himself, gets his magic sword, and then he starts his campaign of vengeance, which he does in a particularly brutal way against people sleeping during the night, so that his manner of killing is confused with an evil spirit. This eventually causes things to fall apart, and he eventually confronts his mother, who makes clear to him that she never wanted to be with his father, that he's a product of rape, that actually she wanted the whole time to be with the uncle, and that she engineered the whole coup. So there was never a mother to rescue. At that point, things descend further and further and further. He kills his mother and his half-brother, and then he kind of gives up in vengeance, and he flees with Anna Taylor-Joy. And Anna Taylor-Joy is by this point pregnant. And they get in a boat to sail away to the Orkney Isles. Then he's like, "Oh no, happy life, my wife, my children. No, I need to jump off the boat and go chase after my uncle and kill him in a volcano, because that's his fate. That's his destiny."
Yeah, I think. I'll pull up the script real quick.
Quinn's consulting the original sources. Instead of me, who's combined reading the Wikipedia page with just remembering the film from 5 years ago.
So the CRS in the vision says remember the last teardrop, the oath you to right the wrong, remember the Raven King, remember it contains the salty ocean you must sail upon to the edge of the world, and we've gotten through all there, but the part of the prophecy that he has not yet completed at this point is it will take you to an island in the north where there will spring a burning lake bursting from a black mountain's peak, where Hamlet will drown his father's killer. Follow the vixen's tail to the dwelling of the Ancient One to seek the fated sword. He already got that. But when Amleth asks, "Why speak my fortune?" the seeress replies, "For your path of ashes ends, another will begin her journey, a maiden king." And I think that there's a certain point where he realizes that he's got a child, and he realizes that to protect his child from this cycle of violence, he has to go back and you know, violently demolish the past.
Yeah. It just felt very unconvincing to me, because ultimately he left his uncle as like one guy in a slaughtered community in Iceland. Who
Yeah.
obviously would probably pursue his vengeance. And obviously this gets into the whole thing of fate of like, and what's good about Eggers' movies, and the Northman in particular, is that they very much do not have our modern contemporary conception of morality or fate or kind of the structure of things. Because we can be like, oh, well, realistically, what could that one man do? And it's like, well, with fate on his side, one man can do a lot, as we've already seen throughout the movie.
Yeah. No, 100%. And yeah, I think that like it seems like a bit of a, I don't know. The fact that he kind of killed his half brother by accident, or like not fully intentionally, was, I think, honestly the easy way out. Like not having to make that be a real conscious decision of like creating like essentially something exactly in his own image.
Right, yeah. I mean, it would be much more interesting if his half brother had remained alive, right?
And
maybe his mother too, depending.
Yeah, I think that I'm still not sure about her, because I think that like when she was going over that whole like, oh no, I never loved your father. It
Oh yeah, it's
was
not
my
clear
plan.
she's telling the truth, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I like, and I think this is also just like a testament to the performance of Nicole Kidman, who I think did a fantastic job. Like I really can't tell if that's just like, okay, fuck, my husband's brother has now taken me. I have to find a way to make this work.
Yeah.
And like, regardless of whether or not it like, you know, it happened that way, that might just be like what she believes now.
Yeah. And certainly, like, him returning solves nothing and helps nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
As we see that her other son is killed, and then in the end, soon after she dies, a few hours later, both of her children are dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, the kind of contrast I wanted to settle with Dune is that what's interesting about fate in Dune, in the context to something like Oedipus Rex or Hamlet, is that fate and destiny completely exist in Dune, but at the same time, they're a completely material, completely human process, not produced by any kind of outside alien forces, supernatural forces. It's all internal to humanity and our own contradictions. While in Oedipus Rex and Hamlet, while obviously a great deal of what's going on is to do with kind of the failures of men and the weakness of men and the men's desire for vengeance and so on, ultimately they're all direct and clear supernatural elements in this play. In this, actually, no, the Oedipus Rex is also a play. They're both plays.
Yeah.
While Northman presents something in between, where okay, like maybe okay, there are a couple cases where it seems like, oh, is this not just straightforwardly supernatural? But at the very least, we're left with the question of, is Amaleth actually fated and destined to do these things? Or does he simply have this kind of overwhelming desire for vengeance, and he reproduces and alters the things he hears so that they fit into his desire for vengeance up until the very end, where he abandons his family for the sake of them?
Yeah, and like I think that, you know, there's a kind of Freudian reading on it that like, you know, growing up in like he at his point of coming of age, having this kind of violent destruction of his family, and then it seems like for the foreseeable like in between, but between like when we next see him on screen, most of his experience like with other human beings has been like through violence. So there's only like, you know, there's a certain toolkit that he has, and like he's a hammer with a whole lot of nails in front of him. Whether or not
Nice.
that's like contradictory with the kind of Fates reading, I don't really think so, but yeah, so that's true, Red, but I don't think that
that's the point where she's clearly like mocking him, you know.
yeah, I don't think that was serious. I think that it was mocking, but also just like an attempt to get him to drop his guard so that she could kill him.
Yeah.
I don't think that was actually on the table.
And I'd say the other main obvious contrast between Dune and not just Northman, but all these works that inspired Northman, and generally the Western canon, is that Paul is both seer and hero. Very, very rarely are these things combined, and that's kind of one of the literary achievements of Dune, is that it's very hard to combine these things. And I think that's one reason why in the books, the guy I always called Herbert Dune. What's his
Herbert Dune.
Name?
Herbert M. Dune.
What's his full name?
Oh fuck me!
What made you forget?
Yeah, I remembered it when you said it the first time, and then I said Herbert Dune, and then it just disappeared.
Herbert Dune is a really powerful meme. That raises everything else. Frank.
Yeah, Frank Herbert.
Why Frank Herbert uses the omniscient narrative in the books, where we're set up from the beginning for our point of view to kind of know more than it should in some way, where we see the doctor, and he's named immediately as he comes into the scene as a traitor, and the question is then never, oh, who is the traitor in the family, as it is in the films. The question is rather, oh, when will the blow strike?
Yeah, and I think that like that, along with the like the intro to all of the chapters with what is it, Princess Irulan, like from her like history of what happens, kind of sets it back in like a kind of historical frame that works really well for that.
Yeah, and being hero and prophet, oracle, whatever, is also what makes Paul so guilty. So Amaleth is not really an admirable character, but at the same time, he can't really be blamed. Within his kind of culture and traditions, the role that he performs is a very kind of usual one. It's an expected kind of position, and one where external forces have kind of dictated and pushed everything. Which is not to say that Paul is in any way free. He's fundamentally unfree in many different ways. But Paul can see his own destiny, and he goes for it. We see the struggle with his destiny in Dune 2.
His terrible purpose.
Yeah, where he's constantly trying to find another way to the way that's being set out for him. But in the end, when he can't accomplish it, he's like, oh, well, I'll just use the family atomics. And it's interesting, obviously, that kind of this reluctance on his part, obviously the real Kazakh Haderach, I don't know, would have just kind of overcame everything. But his flaws and his struggles aid him for a long time, because it's kind of his flawed nature, his inability to fully grasp his kind of genocidal destiny that leads him to... That's why Chani loves him.
Yeah, and I think that it makes for a more interesting kind of characterization. I think that having like, you know, the perfect Kwisatz Haderach would not make for a very entertaining story. especially not from like a point of view character.
Right, it couldn't be him. I don't know if anyone in the chat has read. He's also not a perfect prophet. If anyone's read Backer and his Second Apocalypse series, again, that he's not a perfect prophet of the future, but there is a point in those book series after the first couple where we don't get any more perspective from like the prophet king kind of character, because you just couldn't give it from his perspective. He's too alien. He knows too much. Showing anything from his perspective would give the whole game away. So at that point, you just can't see anything out of his eyes.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun read.
Unfortunately, Backer's world is amazing. It's probably the most clearly philosophically inspired and directly. He's also a philosopher of any mainstream, well, not mainstream, but popular fantasy work. And in the same time, it's absolutely unrelentingly grim in such a way that I can't possibly read it.
Sounds exciting. What a pitch.
I think I gave up maybe in book 3. I was considering restarting it, and then I remembered that one of the main characters spends like maybe basically a whole career in the book just getting raped. And I was like, I can't be bothered.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of had a similar experience reading some McCarthy. Like, I got through the road and I was like, okay, this was like, you know, a bit depressing, but like at least it was interesting. And then I tried to get through all of the fucking Western one. I'm blanking on the name. Give me just a second.
Fuck. Yeah, me too. I started reading this here too, and then I also couldn't get through it.
Blood Meridian.
Blood Meridian.
Yeah, and I think I got like halfway through it, and it was exhausting. Like I think like I get kind of what it's going for, but like it's too much. I can't.
I think I'm going back to it and just skipping until the bit where the judge turns up.
Well, he shows up fairly early.
I mean, he shows up fairly early, but then
he disappears.
Yeah, then he disappears again for a while. I didn't get to that second bit. I only got up to when they were preparing for the expedition into Mexico.
Oh, yeah. No, the Mexico expedition drags pretty long.
But Vlad said there's no real twists in Dune, which is true in the books, but I watched the film first, and I was like stunned by because I mean, I think that's one of the funnest things you can do in a novel if you can pull it off. The sudden immense surge of violence, where all the previous things that were set up before kind of fall apart, where you had the struggle. So they were struggling with, I forget what the bad guys are called in Dune. Well, not the bad guys.
Harkonnens?
The Harkonnens, yeah. They're having a struggle with the Harkonnens, which they think are ruled on a certain basis. And then the Emperor and the Harkonnens conspire to create new rules in which the trade is completely crushed. It's the same reason that like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire is so appealing, because it takes what you think is the conflict and just escalates it to a new level while also still remaining plausible. That's the kind of problem where grimdark books fail, when they fail to make this stuff seem appealing, seem reasonable.
Yeah. I think that like the Red Wedding is also an interesting example, because if I remember right, we don't actually see it from any of the point of view characters. We at least in the books.
You see a bit from Carlin.
Oh yes, no, that's true. Yeah, because it's her chapter, but then she actually dies. Yeah.
But then you hear a lot more about it from other people, yeah, later on.
Because like the parts that I remember from the books are like Arya out in the camps, trying to figure out like what's going on, and like all of the people kind of hearing about it secondhand, and it feeling almost like unbelievable, and like this huge kind of horror that's bigger than any of the characters can fully comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, I think also Song of Ice and Fire is an interesting example of, but we don't have the answers yet, of how real is fate and destiny in the Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, I mean, I
guess we won't get the answer.
Yeah, I don't
It
know if the
seems
book's
that
ever
way.
coming out. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe when George is done, like overseeing one of the,
Yeah.
I don't know how many
I mean, the thing is,
fucking
like,
TV adaptations there are at this point.
there's like a version of Winds of Winter which exists, right? It just he's not
Sure.
happy with it. He's released
Yeah.
like 10 chapters from it. I think some people think like it doesn't exist at all, but it definitely does. The book which doesn't really exist is A Hope of Spring.
Yeah. Which I don't know if we're ever getting that.
No.
Yeah.
Did you notice? I mean, what triggered my first video in June, which I did in this channel, was the kind of outrage around Paul. That people seemed like upset that this man was a hero of a film, of a series. And he doesn't even really do his really terrible things in the films.
Yeah, I mean, like he's gonna do some real bad stuff, but he hasn't gotten there yet. And like
I mean, he does use nuclear weapons, but on a military target.
Yeah, and like at that point, I think that honestly, like there were a lot of people that were really like upset with him from like the first one, and I think some of that is like people are annoyed by Timothy Chalamet, or they're like projecting
like
things that they're
it goes
upset
in the
about.
narratives of like Orientalism or whatever.
Yeah, and like I think that the kind of uncomfortable Orientalism was on purpose.
Yeah.
Like I think that that's definitely something that was in the original text translated into the film to try to make you like I think it's a good way to kind of force most audiences to have a little bit of like, you know, reticence about Paul, because if without that he does seem like much more of the kind of traditional hero.
Yeah.
And having some kind of having some, you know, little moral quandaries about the way that he's acting sets up some of the later problems well, in my opinion.
It is also interesting that both in the Northman and in Dune, that kind of the violence and the prophecy and the destiny is set up by women, but then executed by men.
Yeah.
In Dune, like very directly, the Bene Gesserit like make fate and make destiny, while in Northman it's more indirect. If we believe that the supernatural elements are real, that the women are channeling this other being's will and not executing themselves. But obviously, that's what they would like the people they speak to believe, in order that their declarations are taken seriously.
Yeah, and I think that kind of dovetails well with like a more traditional gendered understanding of the fates. And like, you know, especially in kind of antiquity through like the classic Greek myths, it's you know, Odysseus is the one swinging the sword, but he's not the one really making any of the important decisions.
The character arc of Rand in Wheel of Time is my favorite of any character, any series ever. But at the same time, I don't think Destiny and Fate are particularly interesting Wheel of Time, in that they just seem very unambiguously real. There's actually, I don't know, you probably won't know this, Quinn. I don't think you haven't read the series, you haven't watched the TV series. I guess it never came up in the TV series. Oh, it does come up in the TV series in the first season, but they don't explain it very well. You know how in books, somehow the hero is always there for the relevant plot events?
Yeah, well, in some books, I think there's lots that don't do that in interesting ways. Song of Ice and Fire being one of them, but yeah,
true. But in Wheel of Time, they just make this into like a metaphysical element of the world, where the main characters are something called Taverin, who fate is literally constantly weaved around them, and so plot events just happen to them as they go around, which obviously makes them more powerful in their terms to change the world, but also takes away their independence at the same time, because it's not clear to which degree they have any sense of free will and so on. So fate and destiny are just incredibly real in the Wheel of Time. there's like a really, really lengthy prophecy, especially about Rand, which kind of just goes into details about everything he's going to do, and then he does them all. Obviously, it's not completely like it's not completely unambiguous what he's doing, but often he's getting the prophecy out himself and reading it and trying to work out what his move should be, like how he's going to beat the devil at the end and so on. Like literally reading the prophecy to himself, trying to work out what he's going to do. And there's kind of no suggestion at all from anyone, especially later on in the series, that, oh, is there anything like all these prophecies really real and so on like that. There's nothing like as happens in Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, where actually the prophecy is corrupted by like an evil god or anything. No, these are like the real texts, the real tomes, and throughout the process they're used kind of for the good of the heroes.
Yeah, I do think that the kind of corruption of prophecy in Mistborn was, I think, especially at least in the original trilogy, was a lot of fun in the first two books, and then in the last one got a little long in the tooth.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just the general Sanderson problem. That is, he goes on, he just goes up and up and up in scale until he just drowns himself in it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you've already set that momentum for the first, like, you know, for the first two instances, and you've got to finish it, there's kind of only one way to do it.
At the start, Quinn had his hair down, and we both looked suitably epic, but now he's done it up.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I'll go back. There we go.
Nice.
Better?
Yes. I'm happy.
The things I do for the fans.
Yeah, I think also with Paul and his destiny, the outrage was not just that, you know, this character existed, but this character is meant to be the hero. And I think that comes from this increasingly kind of, I was going to say made into poverty. What do you call it? Like a poorer concept of the hero, where the hero is the guy who's good. And obviously
it's a bit of kind of the lowest common denominator, like game of broken telephone. Like you start with this like more complex hero as like a figure of like story structure, and we're like however many steps away to the point where it's just good guy person who I should like everything that they do.
Because it's interesting. It's obviously in a large part just because the film was not nearly as famous. But in the Northman, Amalef is also clearly not a hero in the sense of being a good guy. He's definitely not a good guy.
He murders dozens of people.
Contrary conception, is he a good guy?
Yeah, even by like the standards of the time, like on the scene where they're taking the boat into Iceland, the Anya Taylor-Joy's character looks at him and says, like, I know what you are. Like, there is a sense that the kind of raiding and slaving that they've been doing is not universally accepted, especially by the people who are being...
Oh, right, yeah. It's obviously the Slavic characters, to the degree they have a perspective in the film, obviously object to the Vikings.
But at a certain point, that's a good question. It depends if you like Sanderson. Like, if you like his writing, then sure. It's a whole lot of Sanderson.
The first one was one of my favorite books ever. The second one and I think third one were good. The fourth one, I was like, oh, what's going on? And then the fifth one's finally come out, and I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, have I changed, or has he changed, or have both of us changed? Because I fucking hate this. Like, I got maybe 30 to 40 pages, which obviously in a Sanderson's book is at 1%, into the fifth book, and I just couldn't read it at all. Like, it was so terrible. Like, the writing was so bad. so juvenile, so immature, and I was like, this must be partially a thing of Sanders. Like as he becomes more famous, Sanderson is like pushing off his editors more, but at the same time, it was also just because my standards have got higher.
Yeah, that's fair. I got into a Sanderson phase last year and just like read through a bunch of them really quickly, and they're good if you read them quickly. But yeah, I think that if you want to like really sit down and engage with the text in like a more methodical way, Sanderson might not be the best person to do that with. Like, you know, there's plenty of other authors. Many of them are entertaining.
Have you read much Grimdark?
Not that much. Let's see. I feel like my bookshelf is like I just moved and my bookshelf is mostly in like 4 to 5 banker boxes, completely unorganized. So I can't like pull out recommendations. I started reading Nabokov again, which is always like, he's such a beautiful writer, but like Jesus Christ. Sometimes I need a fucking breath mint after like reading a chapter or two.
But yeah, I wonder why no one kind of objected to Amaleth as a character. If it's just a thing of like, people can grasp that once it's placed within the context of like Vikings and so on, you accept that the main character, the hero, is going to be this ultra-violent guy. While with Paul, because he's set in this like pseudo-modernist setting, and he's meant to be kind of this like soft guy, basically. You know, he's Timothy Chalamet. Then when Timothy Chalamet starts like doing Orientalist genocide, we're like, oh no, this isn't like within my expectations.
Yeah, it's also because there's less separation, it's much more of an indictment on like the viewing public, right?
Yeah.
Like the Dune in its original form as a novel, and I think also like where these movies are going are an indictment of like the kind of modern West and the violence that kind of imperial structures have used to maintain their power. It's the like having a kind of mirror held up to us as like, we want to think of ourselves as kind of the heroes of history, but like this is what that looks like, is a lot less, it's a lot less palatable than like, you know, something very much of its time and of like an alien morality. Like it's Amleth is easier to compartmentalize than Dune.
I always think a lot of it is because he treats women nicely in the film.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
Like obviously to the degree, to the context, but that is something where like, even if you've got this super violent, epic hero or whatever, if they ever committed sexual assault, no one would ever like them ever.
Yeah, no, it would be really, really, it would be really hard for, I mean, I don't think I would have an easy time rooting for a character that.
No, I mean, it would obviously be a feeling of also in my heart, that part that I would struggle to deal with such a hero. But obviously this is something to do with our very modern conceptions.
Sure, but I think even at the time, there was like, it's maybe not seen as in the same kind of moral light because of like just how prevalent it was. And I think we see that kind of as some of his other like raiders are like dragging women off screen. It's there's kind of an implied darkness there that doesn't leave him completely untainted.
But yeah, Amaleth is too focused on just doing actual murders.
Yeah. Fucking no.
I've actually got the quote here from when I did the Dune Heroes thing about what Herbert Dune thinks he's warning against. Should I read it?
Yeah, please.
It begins with a concept to do a long novel about the messianic convulsions which periodically inflict themselves upon human societies. I had this theory that superheroes were disastrous for humans. That even if you constituted an infallible hero, the things this hero sets in motion fall into the hand of fallible mortals. What better way to destroy civilization, society, or a race than to set people into the wild oscillations which follow their turning over their judgment and decision-making to a superhero? The faculty for wishful thinking out of which the superhero syndrome arises has not been sufficiently understood. Dune, of course, takes you through the creation of the superhero. Paul Atreides becomes the Mahdi of the Fremen. Please focus on that word, because many of the elements which go into making the superhero are laid out for you in this work. You have here kind of distillation of an aristocratic bureaucracy, one of whose unmentioned ancestors is the Soviet experiment. You are taken through a history of many power instruments which have been tried and discarded. The particular passage which I've read here, the banquet scene, is a watershed in the understanding of Paul Atreides. You see his family and his supporters, the blind forces which are organized against him. Raw powers displayed here in the most seductive guise, and amidst a scene with commonplace roots, the dinner party, the place where we ingest energy. You see the good face which is put upon humans to decide their personal necessity, and you gain insights in the moral base upon which Paul makes his own decisions. All this couched in a form which makes Paul and his people admirable. I am their advocate. Don't lose the sight that House Atreides acts with the same arrogance towards common folk as their enemies. I am showing you the superhero syndrome and your own participation in it. The arrogant, on part, created by the meek. Which obviously is interesting there, because what's Frank Herbert's expectation, and was probably more true in the books released, is that people would take Paul as the hero.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes the reception to the films interesting, when you had these countless articles coming out being like, oh, Paul isn't the hero. I think because this superhero syndrome is even more ingrained in society as when Frank Herbert wrote this, such that,
especially in film,
such that Paul can no longer act as a warning against the superhero, because he's not even taken as a superhero, because his kind of ambiguities and his like evils or whatever are taken to exclude him from the category of a hero from the start, instead of you being lulled in initially.
Yeah, I think also there's enough, like in all of the years following Dune, a lot of the things about the text that were like really kind of novel have become sci-fi tropes.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of base familiarity with like a lot of the what would be like, you know, super new and interesting settings, they feel a lot more familiar to modern audiences. So there's less to kind of distract from what's there in like the kind of, you know, Orientalist dynamics.
The ancient history of the 1980s.
Yeah, I mean,
but again, slapping women is a lot different to the other thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
It's also interesting in the films, the Harkonnens are like less absolutely ridiculously evil. Like in the books, he's just like a gay pedophile.
Yeah, I think that they're evil in the movies, but they feel alien enough that like it doesn't even read as like recognizably evil.
Right. I mean, the bit they show on their planet is like it's all done in grayscale, as if to say they're in a completely different universe.
Well, not even just grayscale. It's shot in infrared.
Oh right, yeah.
And so like the way that light reacts to skin feels wrong.
Yeah. Man, that film's so fucking good.
Now I'm just thinking about those, like the fucking arena scene.
Yeah.
The way the crowd like moved, like this like strange undulating mass, felt so like, because like you know, you've seen a sports arena from the air before. That's an
Yeah.
image that I think all of us have seen before, but making that feel properly alien felt
Mhm.
really impressive to me. Like, how do you make like a cheering crowd feel so off, and not just like, the World Cup in black and white?
Funny thing about this show is I can't talk about how this destiny will play out in Dune Part 3 because I didn't read that far in the books. I'm obviously vaguely aware of what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I read a synopsis, but yeah, I finished the first book, and then I got distracted with something else and never read the next one.
I got upset when Paul became a father because I don't like reading about parents. But then obviously, if I'd read further on, I found out his kid gets annihilated in a raid. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot
obviously,
of
a big
just,
question that we should be discussing today is how the fuck are they going to deal with Anna Taylor-Joy in Dune 3?
is he, are they just gonna make him have two wives?
No, but I mean the fact that she's a baby.
Oh, right.
She's still in the womb. She's still in the womb at the end of part two, while in the book she's, I don't know, 5 already by that point. And obviously she's a mega mind, so she develops. So I assume that we'll see her as a baby, but we'll mainly see her within Paul's mind. We'll just see him in the dreamscape. Like Anna Taylor
Yeah,
Joy will never appear in the real world.
or there's some kind of like rapid aging thing
Yeah.
where like her face is CGI'd onto a small child, which would be like incredibly like visually disturbing. But
Yeah, I mean that's more like if he had the technology, that's what they would have done in like the 1970s June.
yeah, no, that's just have her speaking backwards, and it's complete. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Villeneuve would do that, but also like, who knows? It's I think Dune gives a little bit of permission to be weird with filmmaking.
My favorite scene in June 1 is when after they've all been fucked up, the Atreides have lost, and he's in the tent with his mother, and he's like, "You made me into a freak," and he's just like he sees his destiny, which he always has the thing of his destiny. He can't escape for it in the literal sense that it exists in his own mind, and he's just troubled and horrified. But at the same time, obviously, as a viewer, it's exhilarating. Obviously, to him, it's horrifying when
Mhm.
he's showing you all this genocide and war, a holy war spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, war in my father's name. Paul's horrified at it. But as a viewer,
Yeah,
you're like, hell yeah, this is
yeah.
cool.
I get
This
to
is
choose
sick as
see shit
hell.
blow up.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think that dynamic exists in other parts of it. Like when the Harkonnens attack, like that invasion scene is gorgeous. Like all of the aerial bombardment and the Sardaukar like invading in and slaughtering people. It's, as a viewer, it's stunning. Um, I'm, I'm sure in character they're not having fun, but um, it plays with that kind of separation between audience and character.
I was gonna say his mom's also like so fucking cool, especially in June 2.
Mhm.
I'm just reading my notes from the previous one. On the topic of heroes and our poor concept of them these days. I wrote that we're all the meme of the 4chaner asking if the gym is based or cringe, if it's wet or dry.
Jesus. No pug doggies in the battle, though. Yeah, that's true. Well, you don't know that. Most of that battle scene was dark, so they're just hiding in the background. I don't think that we've seen any, like, other than like kind of glimpses of them. I don't think that we've seen
I think
any.
all the kind of really horrifying things we see are purely in vision.
Mhm. Apart from the atomics being used.
Yeah, but again, like they don't actually really kill anyone. They used to like shield crack, basically, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
I did not remember that part of the book.
I assume it's later on than we read.
Yeah, probably. There's been some wonderful speculation on a book series we haven't finished.
You're still not logged on the stream yet, are you?
No, I gotta fix that later. Tragedy of Jessica Harkin and Atreides might be an interesting way to frame it.
Yeah, I mean, I asked about Grimdark in case you wanted to do a future episode on Grimdark, but we should do things that we're actually familiar with. I'm not going to be like, oh, and actually, Quinn, you read 10 books of Grimdark fantasy before the next show.
I do. I read all the Witcher books. We talk about those. That's. I mean, it's got some interesting adaptations. Some more.
So I mentioned Joe Abercrombie earlier, and I read recently one of his books, but it feels like each time he's following the same sort of formula, but then as each book happens, the formula becomes less and less impressive. So like, especially with Grimdark, and because he introduces new characters, it's like, oh, I can't believe bad things are happening again. Like at some point, Grimdark becomes just as kind of predictable and straightforward as like, the opposite of like a noble happy tale. Where like if you just expect the worst thing that could happen to happen, it becomes less interesting. It becomes not at all shocking. There's nothing interesting going on. It's like, oh yeah, right, yeah, of course. What else would happen?
Yeah. Oh, do you ever read Piranesi?
I did.
That could be interesting. You didn't like it?
Didn't like it.
Okay. Because I thought that was a lot of fun. But also,
I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I read slower. I read really, really fast, so I read it in like, I don't know, like a few hours. And I think that led to it feeling like each part I didn't live with it long enough, And so it became evident to me very, like, I don't know, I was reading maybe for 45 minutes before I was like, oh, right, they're living in some kind of weird annex, but the real world definitely exists out there. And kind of at that point, also, I think it doesn't help. I'm English. And so when you hear about Battersea, really the magic is ruined.
Yeah, I had to look up where that was. I'm like, what is that?
What is Battersea?
That sounds like something from the real world, but it's completely alien to me. Yeah.
I assume you liked it.
I did, but also like I think it's because I read it over the course of like a week.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was much easier to kind of like really kind of sit with the progression.
Yeah, because for me, it wasn't magical enough, basically. While at the same time, like it was not like such.
Did you read her previous book, the Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell?
No, but I think I would like that one a lot more.
Yeah, because that one it's longer, it's slower, it's much more magical, it's even more British.
Yeah.
And it's got a whole lot of like kind of historical tie-ins with the Napoleonic Wars and such.
Yeah, I mean it's a shame that she's like 70, so we'll probably only ever get like one more novel from her.
Or she's just gonna like open the floodgates and be like, "Ha! I've been writing this whole time. Here's 6."
I was looking up like a young adult author that I read when I was younger. I was going to actually name them, but I think they named something very different in the United States. The Spooks series, um, which I found very interesting because they kept the magic in them quite low. Like the main character and his mentor like are very explicitly fighting um, like evil spirits and so on. But they don't become particularly powerful. Like throughout, like a particular spirit, a particular like bogart or whatever is a real threat to them. Um, and which is not the case when they very loosely adapted it into a film, which they definitely ruined the whole thing. But I learned that he just kept writing them until he died. I assumed that he stopped at like book 5 or something, but no, he produced like 25 of them. He just wrote them until his whole life, until the last one came out the year after he died. And in the first like 20 of them, we only got from the character being 13 to when he was 16. And then suddenly in like the last quadrilogy or whatever, we jumped forward 15 years or something.
Wow. Yeah. I'm thinking of other like long running series. We should probably wrap up eventually, but another good example of like a kind of series going an interesting way is the Earthsea trilogy.
Mm.
Or at least what was originally a trilogy, but is later revisited. Le Guin comes back to it and writes this kind of coda book like 25 years after the last one comes out, and it's this beautiful meditation on like motherhood and like growing old and feeble in a world that values like power and strength and how like you kind of have to live with the decisions you made. It's a beautiful book that you have to get through 3 like young adult books from the 70s to enjoy.
I mean, I've read the 3 young adult books from the 70s, but I think my constitution is made in such a way that I would hate the mother book.
Yeah, it was not a super popular book from fans of the originals.
We got $10, Quinn.
Oh, hell yeah.
Say thank you to the man.
Thank you, Christopher Cotton 7149.
The worst thing is when I'm reading, obviously doesn't apply here, but the worst thing is when I'm reading someone's comment out and I try to read their name and I realize like a few characters in that it's absolutely incomprehensible. Like there's no way you can pronounce it. Obviously, it's never meant to be pronounced.
Mm-hmm. It's always entertaining to see us try them.
Did you read the British Marxist guy, who's also a sci-fi fantasy author?
You got to be more specific.
There's only like one that's still alive.
Still alive.
He's got like a cool name. Can't remember what it is.
We'll come back to it later.
I do this chat because my keyboard doesn't work when I'm doing the show because I've got too many external things plugged in. And so I can't. It's like before the internet would, even though I'm streaming, I can't Google anything. So I just have to describe things to other people and hope that they know.
All right. Well, we'll come back to it eventually. Yeah. Any closing remarks on Fate?
It was my own Saving Private Ryan. Fate, Destiny. I don't know. I think Dune does it very, very well. And I think that's interesting because you would think the texture, you think if you remove the non-human elements from Fate and Destiny, we'd actually reduce kind of the possibility of the content, right? If you've taken out this whole aspect to it of magic and so on, you'd think you'd have a more impoverished Fate and Destiny. But I think of any series, actually, Dune deals with it much more. Like if you compare it to something like some brilliant series like The Lord of the Rings, Fate is like very boring in Lord of the Rings compared to. I mean, Fate is kind of boring in Lord of the Rings compared to even the play we were talking about, the Shakespeare play, Hamlet. So I think it's a really great achievement by Mr. Herbert Dune, he made fate the most interesting while removing so much of what it could possibly be. And I think that's another good lesson for sci-fi fantasy authors right now, who are constantly trying to introduce magic systems and alternative worlds and this and this and that. That actually, often the best way to portray something is not to make it as elaborate as possible, but to strip it down as far as possible. Dune's meant to be like a galactic sci-fi series, but actually what you have is a contestation between nobles on a particular place where like the set dressing is sci-fi, but in structure, I don't think it's particularly a sci-fi novel at all.
No, it's a political drama on like with like, you know, noble houses.
Yeah, where there's one race, there's one species, there's one political structure, there's just an empire. It's all very stripped down, all very basic. And in that context, that allowed him to tell this brilliant story about destiny and fate.
Yeah. And I think that the Northman kind of gives us an alternative view where the fate is something kind of magical and external to humanity, and yet it is still you know, it is always kind of malleable and responds to the ways that we either embrace it or fight against it.
The British Marxist guy is Chinaman Melville.
Gotcha.
I told you he had a weird name. His first name is China.
Yeah.
Most people aren't called China. Quinn, do you know I've been going to Chinese lessons for now like 15 months.
Oh, really?
I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at it. I failed my exam this summer.
Shit.
It's really fucking hard.
Apparently, a white boy speaking a little Chinese is harder than I initially
Harder than
thought.
you think.
Oh, yeah.
I did actually get asked to speak a little Chinese for them today while I was at D&D, and I just said I don't like Chinese people in Chinese.
Wonderful. We should probably say, please like and subscribe and you
Please
know,
like and
do
subscribe.
all of the social media things. We've got a Patreon. You can support the work that This Is Revolution does by giving us money.
You can give us $10, just like Christopher Cotton 7149 did.
Exactly. You can live chat.
Be the inspiration that you want to see in the world.
You can track me down in Newark, New Jersey, and hand me a bundle of cash.
It will get to Jason, we promise.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to tease the chat for anything we're going to do next week, or are we going to discuss it afterwards?
No, it's going to be a surprise to them and maybe to me.
Sick.
We're going to leave them guessing.
But very exciting moment. We're going to be showing for the first time, if it's uploaded properly, new outro. Bye. I've still got this hand. I had this hand up already. I should have waved with that one. I should have just gone, like, who's ever done that in their life? Just had one hand flat up, but then they're waving with the other one.
It's a half wave, half surrender. I swear I'm not reaching.
Bye.
All right.
Start eating that trash can.
I already am eating from the trash can all the time.